An elderly woman named Grace stepped into the pawn shop. She was completely alone, and now her only goal was to say a proper goodbye to her son. She didn't have enough money, so she was forced to sell a family heirloom. Little did she know that standing nearby was someone who would change her fate forever. Keanu Reeves's act of kindness will leave warmth in your heart, restore your faith in humanity, and bring tears you won't be able to hold back. Friends, let us know in the comments under what conditions you watch this video. In the background, while working, or during lunch. Also, don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow another emotional story will be waiting for you. A small antique shop in Los Angeles was enveloped in dim light. The yellowish glow of old-fashioned lamps hanging from the ceiling faintly illuminated display cases filled with expensive jewelry and exquisite artifacts from past centuries. The air carried a mixture of dust, polished wood, and the faint scent of aged paper. Everything here spoke of objects that once held deep meaning but had now become mere commodities. The shop was quiet, but it was not a comforting silence. It was indifferent, cold, almost soulless. Stories were not told here. They were sold. Grace appeared in the doorway. Her frail body, wrapped in a worn woolen shawl, seemed delicate, as if a single gust of wind could break her. She hesitated for a moment, gathering her strength before stepping inside. Her face was weary, deeply lined with age, and her eyes looked hollow, extinguished, like those of someone who had lost everything. Slowly, Grace stepped forward, clutching a small velvet pouch in her hands. Her movements were careful, almost reverent, as if what lay inside was priceless. And in truth, it was. A golden pocket watch, the last memory of her family. Her trembling fingers held it tightly, as if sheer willpower alone could keep hold of what she had already lost. Just days ago, her world had completely collapsed. She had been living in solitude for years. Her husband had passed away 15 years ago, and she had no other relatives. But now, her only son was gone too. A car accident. Sudden. Cruel. And now, Grace stood here in this cold shop because she needed money to give him a proper farewell. She had nothing left except this watch, which had once belonged to her husband, and before him, his father. She had kept it for her son, intending to pass it on when he started a family of his own. But that moment never came. She moved closer to the counter, her steps growing slower. For the first time, doubt crept into her heart. Was she making a mistake? Her chest tightened with pain. This watch was the last thread connecting her to those she had loved. Her hands trembled even more, and she gripped the pouch tighter, hesitating before taking the final step. Meanwhile, in the opposite corner of the shop, among shelves lined with antiques, stood Keanu Reeves. He had ended up here by chance, searching for a vintage ring for a charity auction raising funds for orphans. He had been invited as an honorary guest and wanted to find something with real history. But as his gaze fell on the elderly woman at the counter, he instinctively paused. Something about her posture, the expression on her face, stirred an unexplainable sense of unease within him. He didn't know what she was doing there, but he felt it was important. Grace slowly placed the pouch on the counter. The shop was already quiet, but at that moment, it seemed as if even time itself had stopped. Grace stood at the counter, her fingers tightly clutching the small velvet pouch, as if it could somehow offer her one last hope. But there was no room for hesitation now. Slowly, she uncurled her fingers and placed the antique pocket watch on the glass surface. Its golden case, slightly worn by time, still gleamed under the dim shop lights. On the back, engraved initials told the story of its past owners, her late husband, and before him, his father. This was not just a watch. It was the history of her family, the last thread connecting her to the people she loved. Her voice broke the silence, almost a whisper, I want to sell it." The shopkeeper, a man in his 40s with a cold, emotionless face, didn't even glance at her. He picked up the watch without a word, sighing heavily as he turned it over in his fingers, weighing the metal with detached indifference. His movements were mechanical, like someone who assessed objects, not their history. Flipping open the cover, he glanced at the mechanism inside, then shrugged and said flatly, $200. That's all I can give." Grace flinched. Her hands instinctively clenched into fists. She took a deep breath, swallowing the lump that had suddenly formed in her throat. "It's gold. It's antique. It's a family heirloom." Her voice trembled, but she had to try. She wasn't asking for charity, only fairness. The shopkeeper rolled his eyes and scoffed. "I don't care if it's your family's treasure. This is a business, not a museum." Silence. It hung in the air, pressing down on Grace, making her feel the full weight of her helplessness. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Her eyes dropped to the counter. She didn't want to cry. Not here. Not in front of this man, to whom her pain meant nothing more than numbers on a receipt. Meanwhile, in the far corner of the shop, Keanu Reeves slowly lifted his head. He hadn't planned to intervene, but something about this scene made him stop. He saw the old woman's shoulders sag, as if the very air around her had grown heavier. Her face, filled with loss, pain, and the sheer effort of staying strong, stirred a memory within him. His own mother had once stood the same way before a doctor, gripping a medical bill she couldn't afford to pay. His expression darkened. He could no longer stand by and do nothing. Grace ran her finger along the surface of the watch, as if trying to etch it into her memory one last time. Her gaze rested on the engraving, and her voice broke the silence, quiet and fragile. "I kept it for him. But now, I need money to say goodbye." The shop fell into an eerie stillness. Even the few customers browsing the shelves paused. The only sound was the faint ticking of a wall clock somewhere in the background. The shopkeeper impatiently pushed the bills closer to her with a sigh. "So, are you taking it, or not?" At that moment, everything changed. Keanu Reeves stepped forward, swiftly reaching out and covering the watch with his hand, stopping the transaction. "Wait, I'm buying it." The shopkeeper's eyes flicked up in surprise, while Grace's face mirrored pure confusion. Without hesitation, Keanu pulled $5,000 from his pocket and carefully placed the bills in front of Grace. "This is the real price. If you're going to sell it, you deserve what it's truly worth." Grace froze. She looked at the money, then at the watch resting in her hands. Her lips trembled, and her eyes welled with tears. Finally, she let out a shaky breath, carefully took the bills, and, with trembling fingers, handed the watch over to Keanu. But he noticed something. Her lingering gaze on the watch, the way her fingers twitched, as if resisting the loss. No amount of money could replace what this watch meant to her. Her shoulders quivered, and she finally allowed herself to say the words she had been holding back for so long. "I'm all alone. He was my only son, the only one I had." Tears streamed down her cheeks, and she quickly wiped them away with shaking hands. "He died in a car accident, and now all I want is to give him the farewell he deserves." She looked at Keanu with pure gratitude. "This amount, it's more than I ever expected. Because of you, I can finally say goodbye the way he deserved." The shopkeeper remained silent, his face a rigid mask. But in his eyes, there was a flicker of irritation. Anger at the lost deal, at the disruption to his business. But no one paid him any attention anymore. Keanu stood quietly, watching Grace. He saw how she unconsciously touched the empty space where the watch had been, as if already regretting her decision. He took a deep breath. His heart already knew what he had to do next. Grace slowly stepped out of the shop, clutching the bills in her hand. She had the money, but there was no relief. Instead, an emptiness spread through her chest, as if she had given away more than just a family heirloom. She took a few steps down the sidewalk, but her legs felt heavy, and her fingers instinctively searched for the familiar coolness of the metal that was no longer there. Suddenly, a quiet yet firm voice called from behind her, "Ma'am, wait." Grace froze. She turned slowly and saw Keanu standing at the entrance, holding the watch in his palm. His gaze was warm but serious, filled with understanding. He took a few steps toward her and spoke gently. "Let's take a walk." Grace did not object. They moved away from the shop, leaving behind the indifferent shopkeeper and the artificial glimmer of expensive trinkets. The city bustled around them. Cars sped by, people rushed about their business. But for these two, the world seemed to pause for a moment. Keanu looked at Grace intently and said, "I know what it's like to lose someone you love, and I know that some things help us keep going." He extended the watch toward her, carefully placing it in her palm. "Take it. This was never meant to be mine. It was always meant to stay with you." Grace's eyes widened. She covered her mouth with a trembling hand as fresh tears filled her eyes. She didn't even try to hold them back. This was a moment she never expected. I can't," her voice broke. "Yes, you can," Keanu answered softly. "You lost your son, but you shouldn't lose his memory. This belongs with you." The elderly woman grasped his hands, tears streaming down her wrinkled cheeks. "You are sent by God. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have made it. My grief would have consumed me." Keanu took a deep breath. Her words touched something deep within him. He knew that pain, and he knew how important it was to feel that you were not alone. He smiled, gently squeezing her hand, saying nothing more. He simply knew he had made the right choice. Grace stood by her son's grave. The rain fell softly, its cold drops running down her wrinkled cheeks, blending with the tears she could no longer hold back. In her hands was the same golden pocket watch. She traced the engraved initials of her late husband with her finger before slowly placing the watch on the stone surface of the grave. "I kept my promise. Now it's yours forever," she whispered, her voice fading into the gentle rustling of the rain. She stood still, letting the memories of the past wash over her. But this time, the pain of loss wasn't as sharp. For the first time in a long while, her heart did not feel the abyss of loneliness, only a warm, quiet sorrow that came with acceptance. She was no longer truly alone. Even though her son was gone, she knew that a part of him would live on, in this watch, in her memories, in every quiet breath of wind that brushed through her hair. Grace lifted her head to the sky, a faint smile appearing on her lips. The rain no longer felt cold. It was pure, light, like a symbol of a new beginning. And for the first time in years, she felt at peace. This story reminds us of the importance of humanity and compassion. In today's fast-paced world, it is easy to overlook someone else's pain. But even a single act of kindness can change a person's life. Keanu could not stand by and do nothing. And because of his generosity, Grace not only had the chance to say a proper goodbye to her son, but also found reassurance that she was not alone in this world. Let us always remember, there may be people around us who need help, even if they don't ask for it. Sometimes, a simple act of kindness is enough to change a life. Be mindful of those around you. Do good. And one day, someone will do good for you. Be sure to share your impressions of the story in the comments and write what conclusions you have drawn after listening to it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I wish you all a good mood and see you in the new video tomorrow.